Alrighty everybody, it is Unoriginal MJ here, and as promised, I'm going to be beginning to start a series about how to code in R. So our first video is going to be about descriptive statistics. So just a few things. To get started on a project in R, you're going to hit File, New File, so File, New File, and then R Script. And that'll open up an untitled page. You click this little blue icon up here to save your page as well. But I already wrote my R script for you guys, so I'm just gonna briefly go over it. So if you do these 4 little hashtags followed by 4 hashtags after, that'll give you like a menu where you can do it. So first you're gonna set a working directory, either by copying the path or by going into files in the lower corner. So this one right here, files right there, finding the correct folder and copying the path. Then there will be a gear symbol. So this is just an example, but you would do set working directory equals and then the path. And then you'd write the file name, so data, that's what it's going to be read in as, so that it'll be named data equals read.csv, and then my example is hippos.csv. I'm not going to be doing it that way though, so I'm going to show you how to create a dataset first. So to create a dataset using numbers, you need to make vectors, which are going to be under the values section in the top right box. You'll see that in a second. So this is my vector, alright, and then I'm telling it the columns need to be 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to run that, and you're going to see that it just becomes a value, right? So I'm going to run all of these, and you can see right here under the values that it tells you that it is reading these as a number. Sometimes R can be iffy and read those as characters or strings, but we don't want that. But since we've created our vectors, we can now make them into one data set, and that'll appear up here in a second. So I'm naming our first data set experiment. And to do that, I'm gonna do data.frame, parentheses, and then I'm gonna add all of the vectors in there. So that's trial 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now you see data appears up here, and you can actually click on this and it'll pop up here, and you can see that now we have trial 1, 2, 3, 4, and the values that I gave them up here. For this example, I'm only going to be using the numbers because I'm doing stats, but if you want to make a data set with non-numbers or categorical variables, you would do the same thing. So you would need to create, again, your vectors, but since it's not a number, you need to use quotes around them in order to get them to appear. And now here's our frog data set. So here are species American green leopard and our total number. And you can see that the species is being read as a character over here. I'm gonna go ahead and collapse that. And now we're gonna talk about range. So we can use the vector, or trial vectors to do that. That is going to be right here. So if you run those, it'll give you your range. So this is range 1 to 9 for trial 1, 2 to 8 for trial 2, and 3 to 9. But since trial 4 has an NA in it, so we go back here, has an NA, you need to tell it to disregard the NAs in order to get your range. Okay, and you're going to do that with na.rm equals true. So if you want to use our dataset trials, from our actual chart, the $sign signals a specific column within our data set. So you need to do a data set name, which is experiment, and then each $sign each of the columns. And that should bring up the same results. Again, telling it to not include any. So now we're gonna go over summary. So this just quickly, this first one up here, summary parentheses experiment, will summarize our data set. So it'll tell you min, worst quantile, median, mean, third quantile, and the max. Which, since it gives you min and max, you can get the range. You can do that with our vectors right here, and it'll individually read them out to you. You can calculate the mean with the mean function. So mean and then our vector, mean parenthesis vector name inside of them. Again, you need to tell trial 4 to disregard the NAs to get an answer. Now, if you want to add these values, so you want to add the values for the means in a new data set, you can do that. First, you need to make each of these means vectors. So we'll label them m1 equals mean of trial 1, right? And you can see that it gets added in our values column over there. So we go ahead and run. And then we need to create a new data set, right? So since we want to get our trials in there and we need to make those parentheses around the name of the trials, then we need to add our average column, and that is going to be from these vectors. And then we're going to label our data set trial means to data.frame, and then trial comma average. So trial from up here, average from here, in order to get our new data set, which contains the trial and the average. Next, we're going to do our median. So again, if you just want to find them out without getting them in a new data set, you do median, parenthesis, and then the vector. But again, you want to create a new data set. You can do that the same way as above. So you need to make them a vector, you need to make the median a vector, you need to make a new column for trial and a trial for median, and then it should bring it in there. But if you want to add that to our already existing one, which is trial means from above, you do trial means, data set name, $, a new column, which we're going to call median, and then you need to include our vectors that we named them as. So now when we look at our trial means, it'll have the median in that. For standard deviation, we're going to go ahead and combine a few steps into one. Sorry about my dogs, guys. But we're going to go ahead and combine a few steps into one simple step to make this go quicker. So we want to add our standard deviation column into our trial means dataset. So you need to do trial means dataset, $, new column, which I'm going to call SD for standard deviation. And then you need to do the C parenthesis to tell it we're adding columns. And SD parenthesis is going to be the function for standard deviation that you provided on. So you're going to do SD parenthesis, you're going to do our original vectors, which are trial 1. And then you're going to continue down this row. Again, making sure when you get to 4 that you tell it that we have some NAs that it needs to account for. Now when you go back to our trial means, you should see a standard deviation column. Alright. If you wanted to create a new data set because you don't like that our data frame is being called trial means, you don't have to go back and rename everything from the beginning. You can simply just do trial equals data.frame trial means, and that'll bring it up over here in our right box corner. So now it says trial. We have trial, average, median, standard. So the same thing that we had there, except now it's named trial for you. Alright. And so R does not have a function for mode. So you need to kind of create your own function. And this is kind of complicated. So first we need to name our function. We're naming our function mode. And we're going to use the function key. So you need to do function and then what you're going to input into the function. So I'm using X in this case. All right. And then you need to do the little curly brackets. All right. And then within those curly brackets, you need to go ahead and add things. So I'm going to say, first, I need to remember that we have NAs and I want them gone. So I'm going to tell it that for our values, you need to remove them. All right. And then since this is mode, I'm going to name it M. And then I'm going to do unique parenthesis X, which is asking R to remove duplicate numbers. All right. And then again, this M coming from above, and I'm going to tell it to count the number of times each number occurs and give me the frequency and then match that to which value is X with its mode. So when I run this function that I just created, it's going to appear under the functions column, right? And then we want to, again, put that in our data frame. So our new data frame's name is trial. $ mode, we're adding a new column. And then since we made our mode a function, you can go ahead and run it. And since we already omitted our NAs, you don't need to worry about that. But since I only just highlighted this part right here, it'll populate our modes for us down below here without adding it to our data frame. So see how it didn't add it to our data frame? But once I highlight this whole area right here, it adds it to our data frame. And so if you're having an issue in R and you can't figure it out, if you just highlight a section, sometimes it can be pretty helpful to tell you where an error occurs. And the last thing I'm going to throw in here real quick is just how to do some basic plots. So I'm going to do a bar plot. So first, you will need a package called ggplot2. If you don't have the package, you will have to install it. So you need to go to the top ribbon up here. You need to go to Tools, Install Packages, and then you will need to search the package ggplot2. Or if you're not feeling like that, you can use install.packages, parenthesis, double quote, ggplot2, and that should install the package for you. After you have the package installed, you will need to require the package. So that is what require ggplot2 is. Alternatively, you can use library ggplot2. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you use. They both work. Another quick thing I should note is, if you use a single hashtag, it won't actually count the code as the code. It'll just use it as like a quick note. Sorry, I forgot to tell you guys about that. But going back, we've required ggplot2, which now means that we can use ggplot, which is a software that allows you to make graphs in R. So to do that, you need to do ggplot, parenthesis, you need to do data equals, and then the data frame you'll be using. We're going to use the data frame trial. Then you need to do comma, aesthetic, parenthesis, x equals, so we're telling it our x value is going to be trial, which is going to be trials 1, 2, 3, 4. And then our y value is going to be average, so our average column. So we're plotting average. Then you're going to add a plus and go to your next line. And you're going to do geom bar, because remember, we want a bar plot. And you need to tell it that the stats name is identity. That's just so that it can read those values. And then do a pop. And then you can leave it like that. And this is what it will look like. It'll appear over here in your plots package, right? But say you don't like the way that looks, you can go ahead and add themes. There's quite a few themes. I personally prefer the theme classic, just because in ecological data analyses, they typically want like a black-white graph, no lines, etc. So this is the one that I use. And you can see down here we have average and trial. They got those names from our column names, but if you have funky column names, you will have to rename them sometimes. So just keep that in mind. But you see right here how we have trial 2, 1, 3, and 4 that are not in order. We need to reorder them. Sorry, my notes are misspelled and I'm just now realizing that, guys. So we need to reorder them and replot. So over here, we're just telling them that they need to reorder them into 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when we plot them this time, you should be able to see that they're in order. I'm gonna go ahead and take that off for you guys real quick. But now you can see that they're in order. Trial 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. But there's still there's not a space between trial 1. Trial 1 is just one word. Well, that's what this scale x discrete labels does. That is going to cause our tick labels to be renamed. So you can also use scale x discrete to just name the actual x and y labels as well. But that was just a really quick introduction. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see anything in this series, please let me know. My next episode is probably going to be about visualizing data in R, so I'm going to go into more different graphs that R can make. Anyways, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I did put a link for downloading R in the description. If you have any questions about R, I'd be more than happy to try to answer. Again, I'm not an expert, but I do enjoy R and I do like teaching people about it. So anyways, take care guys. Goodbye.